The emergency bay doors exploded open at 3:47 a.m. 6 black Suburbans skidded across wet asphalt, and 12 armed men in tactical gear poured into Riverside General Hospital like a flood. They weren't police. They weren't FBI. The lead operator's voice cut through the chaos. "Where's Evelyn Hart?" Security froze. Administrators went pale. Because 30 minutes earlier, they'd just fired her, humiliated her in front of the entire night staff, stripped her badge, and escorted her out like a criminal. Now the most dangerous men in the country were storming through their lobby, weapons drawn, demanding the nurse they'd thrown away. If you want to see how a woman they called replaceable becomes the one person they can't replace, stay until the end. Like this video, comment what city you're watching from, and let me know how far this story travels. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It hammered the windows of Riverside General Hospital in Crestmont City with the kind of relentless fury that made even the building feel small. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed their eternal hum, casting everything in that cold, sterile glow that made 3 a.m. feel like the loneliest hour in the world. Evelyn Hart stood at the nurse's station on the 4th floor, her hands steady as she logged her final charts. 43 years old, 17 years at Riverside, night shift supervisor, the kind of nurse who remembered every patient's name, every allergy, every fear whispered in the dark when pain made people honest. She wore the same navy scrubs she always did, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, no jewelry except a small silver watch her mother had given her before she died. Evelyn didn't need to be noticed. She just needed to do the work. And tonight, the work had been brutal. Bed 12 in the ICU held a man they'd brought in 4 hours ago. No ID, no insurance, barely a pulse. Gunshot wound to the abdomen, severe blood loss, vitals crashing. The ER doc had stabilized him enough to move him upstairs, but he was circling the drain fast. Evelyn had seen it before, seen the way the system worked when someone came in broken and poor. The attending physician had ordered conservative treatment, fluids, observation, wait and see. No expensive interventions, no restricted medications. She'd also seen men die from wait and see. At 2:15 a.m., his blood pressure had dropped to 70/40. His breathing turned shallow. The monitor screamed. Evelyn had made a choice. She'd grabbed the epinephrine compound from the locked cabinet, the one reserved for cardiac events, the one that required attending authorization. She'd administered it herself, adjusted his IV drip, manually regulated his oxygen intake. 15 minutes later, his vitals stabilized. His color returned. He was still critical, but he was alive. She'd saved him. She'd also broken protocol, and someone had been watching. "Nurse Hart." The voice came from behind her, sharp and cold. Evelyn turned to see Martin Cross, the night administrator, striding toward her with 2 security guards flanking him like sentries. Martin was 56, thin as a whip, with the kind of face that looked like it had never smiled without calculating the cost first. "Mr. Cross," Evelyn said evenly, "my office. Now." She didn't argue. She logged out of the system, set down her pen, and followed him down the hallway. The guard stayed close. Too close. Like she was a threat. Martin's office was small and joyless. Gray walls, a metal desk, a filing cabinet that looked older than Evelyn. He sat down behind the desk and gestured to the chair across from him. She didn't sit. "Do you know why you're here?" Martin asked. "I have an idea." Bed 12. "You administered a restricted medication without attending authorization. He was dying. That's not your call to make." Evelyn's jaw tightened. His blood pressure was crashing. I stabilized him. "You violated hospital policy." Martin opened a folder on his desk, pulled out a printed form. "Epinephrine compound. Class 2 restricted. Requires physician sign-off. You had none. I had a patient in cardiac distress. You had a protocol to follow. I had a man who would have died if I'd waited for paperwork." Martin's expression didn't change. "That man is uninsured, unidentified, and under investigation by local police. You exposed this hospital to liability. You acted outside your authority. And frankly, Nurse Hart, you've been walking a very thin line for a long time." Evelyn felt something cold settle in her chest. "What does that mean?" "It means you have a pattern of prioritizing your judgment over hospital regulations. Last month, you questioned Dr. Brennan's discharge order for a homeless patient. 2 months ago, you filed a complaint about supply shortages that embarrassed the purchasing department. You don't follow the chain of command. You don't respect boundaries. I respect patience. You're a liability. The words hung in the air like smoke. Evelyn stared at him. You're firing me. Effective immediately. Martin slid the folder across the desk. You'll surrender your badge, your keycard, and any hospital property. Security will escort you out. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. 17 years, thousands of patients, countless lives saved, and it all came down to this: a man in a gray suit telling her she was replaceable. I saved his life, Evelyn said quietly. You broke the rules. The rules would have killed him. Then maybe he was supposed to die. The silence that followed was suffocating. Evelyn reached into her pocket, pulled out her badge, and dropped it on the desk. It landed with a small, hollow click. I'll need your keycard as well, Martin said. She handed it over. And your locker key. She gave him that too. Martin stood, gestured to the guards. Escort her out. Make sure she doesn't access any patient records or restricted areas. One of the guards stepped forward, a young guy, maybe 25, with apologetic eyes. Ma'am, if you'll come with us. Evelyn walked. They moved through the hallways in silence. Nurses she'd worked with for years looked away. A janitor she'd always greeted by name suddenly found the floor fascinating. No one met her eyes. No one said goodbye. They passed the ICU. Through the glass, Evelyn could see bed 12. The man she'd saved was still breathing, still alive. She didn't regret it. They took her down to the staff locker room. She emptied her locker, her spare scrubs, a granola bar, a photo of her mom. The guards watched like she might steal something. Then they walked her to the exit. The rain was worse now, a roaring curtain that turned the parking lot into a black mirror. Evelyn stood under the awning, clutching her canvas bag, watching the water pour down. Behind her, the automatic doors hissed shut. She was done. But the night wasn't. Evelyn had just stepped off the curb when the first Suburban arrived. It came fast, too fast, skidding into the emergency bay with a screech of wet tires. Then another. Then 4 more. 6 black vehicles, identical, windows tinted so dark they looked like pieces of the night itself. The doors opened in unison. 12 men stepped out. They wore black tactical gear, helmets, vests, rifles slung across their chests. Their movements were precise, coordinated, like a machine built for violence. Rain hammered against their shoulders, but they didn't react. They just moved. Evelyn froze. The lead man was tall, broad-shouldered, maybe 35. He had a scar running down the side of his jaw and eyes that looked like they'd seen the end of the world and walked back from it. He scanned the area once, then his gaze locked onto the hospital entrance. Move! He barked. The team flowed forward like water. They hit the automatic doors, and the lobby exploded into chaos. Security guards scrambled. A receptionist screamed. Martin Cross came running from his office, his face white. What the hell is this? Martin shouted. You can't just... The lead operator didn't even look at him. Where is Evelyn Hart? Martin stammered. She doesn't work here anymore. Where is she? She was just escorted out. She's gone. The operator turned, scanning the lobby, and then his eyes found the exit. Found Evelyn. She stood just outside the doors, soaked to the skin, staring back through the glass. The operator moved toward her. Evelyn's instinct told her to run, but her legs wouldn't move. She just stood there, frozen, as the man stepped through the doors and stopped 3 feet in front of her. He was even bigger up close. Rain streamed down his helmet. His rifle hung against his chest. He looked at her like he was confirming something, like he was matching her face to a photograph burned into his memory. Then he did something that made the entire world tilt. He removed his helmet and saluted. Ma'am, he said, Unit Omega reporting. Evelyn blinked. What? Commander Dawson, ma'am. Navy Special Warfare. We're here for you. Her mind couldn't process it. I don't understand. You saved one of ours tonight. We're here to make sure nothing happens to you. Saved? Her breath caught. Bed 12. Dawson nodded once. That's correct. Behind him, the rest of the team moved into formation around the entrance. They weren't pointing their weapons at anyone, but the threat was implicit. No one was getting close to Evelyn. Martin Cross pushed through the crowd, his face red. This is private property. You have no authority here. Dawson didn't turn around. Federal authority supersedes local jurisdiction. We'll leave when we're ready. I'm calling the police. Call whoever you want. Evelyn's heart was hammering. I don't understand what's happening. Dawson's expression softened, just slightly. Do you remember Kandahar? 2019. Field hospital. You were a volunteer with Doctors Without Borders. The memory hit her like a truck. Sand. Heat. The smell of blood and diesel. A convoy ambush. 16 wounded soldiers brought in on stretchers, and the hospital so understaffed she'd been doing triage alone. One of them, a young Marine, maybe 22, had been bleeding out from a femoral artery wound. The surgeon was in another tent. No time. Evelyn had clamped the artery herself, tied it off, kept him breathing until help arrived. She'd saved his life. And then she'd rotated home and never heard his name again. You remember? Dawson said quietly. Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. That was you. That was my team. That Marine. His name was Riley. He's alive because of you, and tonight you saved another one of ours. The man in bed, operative, deep cover. He was carrying intel that could take down a major defense contractor tied to arms trafficking. Someone wanted him dead. Someone in this hospital was paid to make sure he didn't survive the night. The words landed like stones. Evelyn turned, looked back through the glass at Martin Cross. His face had gone gray. Dawson stepped closer, lowering his voice. You weren't fired for breaking protocol, ma'am. You were fired because you saved the wrong man. Before Evelyn could respond, another vehicle pulled into the bay, this one unmarked, civilian. 2 men in suits stepped out, moving fast. Dawson's hand went to his sidearm. Federal contractors, he said. They're here for you. Evelyn's pulse spiked. Why? Because you're the only witness who can testify that the operative was stable when you left him. If they take you, the case dies. Then what do I do? Dawson looked her straight in the eye. You come with us. The 2 men in suits moved with practiced efficiency, their eyes scanning the emergency bay like predators tracking prey. Evelyn saw the way their jackets hung, weighted on one side, armed. Dawson's team shifted without a word, forming a tighter perimeter around her. The message was clear. To get to Evelyn, they'd have to go through 12 of the most lethal operators in the country. The lead contractor stopped 20 feet away. He was older, maybe 50, with silver hair and the kind of smooth face that came from never having done hard labor. His partner was younger, built like a linebacker, hand already hovering near his hip. Commander Dawson, the older man said, his voice calm and corporate. Marcus Vance, Sentinel Group. We're here under contract with the Department of Defense to secure a potential witness in an ongoing investigation. She's already secured, Dawson replied. With respect, this is a civilian matter. We have authorization to transport Ms. Hart to a federal facility for her own protection. Show me the paperwork. Vance reached into his jacket slowly, pulled out a folded document. Dawson didn't move to take it. That's a private contractor's letterhead, Dawson said, not federal authorization. It's signed by, I don't care whose name is on it. Unit Omega operates under direct JSOC command. You want her, you go through my chain of command. Until then, she stays with us. Vance's smile was thin and cold. You're making this complicated. I'm making this clear. The tension stretched like wire pulled too tight. Evelyn could feel her heart hammering against her ribs. She'd gone from being fired to standing in the middle of what felt like a military standoff in less than an hour. Commander, she said quietly, what's really happening here? Dawson didn't take his eyes off Vance. The operative you saved. His name is Cole Mercer. He's been embedded for 8 months inside a defense contracting firm called Apex Dynamics. They've been selling classified weapons technology to foreign buyers. Cole got the evidence. Names, dates, transactions, everything needed to bring down the entire network. And they want to stop him from testifying. They want to stop anyone from testifying. Cole's unconscious. You're the nurse who can confirm he was stable, that his decline wasn't natural. Without your testimony, they can claim he died from his wounds and bury everything. Evelyn's mind raced back to the man in bed 12, the way his vitals had crashed so suddenly, the way Martin Cross had been so insistent on conservative treatment. "Martin," she whispered. "He was paid off." "We believe so, along with at least 2 other hospital staff." Vance stepped forward. "This is all very dramatic, Commander, but Ms. Hart is a civilian. She has rights. You can't just... She can make her own choice." Dawson finally turned to look at Evelyn. "Ma'am, these men will take you somewhere quiet. They'll ask you questions. They'll tell you it's for your safety. And then you'll disappear into the system until the investigation goes away." "That's a lie," Vance said sharply. "Or," Dawson continued, "you come with us. We protect you. We get your testimony on record. And we make sure the people who tried to kill Cole answer for it." Evelyn looked between them. Vance's face was smooth, practiced, the face of a man who negotiated for a living. Dawson's was scarred, weathered, the face of a man who'd kept promises when it cost him blood. "I'm going with them," Evelyn said, nodding toward Dawson. Vance's expression hardened. "Ms. Hart, I strongly advise... I'm going with them." For a moment, Vance just stared at her. Then he nodded slowly, stepping back. "Your choice, but you're making a mistake." He gestured to his partner, and they returned to their vehicle. But they didn't leave. They just sat there, engines running, waiting. Dawson's hand touched Evelyn's shoulder gently. "We need to move. Now." She nodded, letting him guide her toward the nearest Suburban. One of the operators opened the rear door. The interior was all black leather and reinforced panels. This wasn't a vehicle. It was a fortress on wheels. Evelyn climbed in. Dawson slid in beside her. 2 more operators took the front seats. The door closed with a heavy, final thunk. Through the tinted windows, Evelyn could see hospital staff crowding the lobby glass. Martin Cross stood at the front, his phone pressed to his ear, his face twisted in fury. The convoy pulled out in formation, 3 vehicles ahead, 3 behind. They moved fast, navigating the rain-slicked streets of Crestmont City like they'd mapped the route 100 times. Evelyn's hands were shaking. She pressed them together in her lap. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Secure location," Dawson said. "We need to debrief you, get your statement documented, and keep you safe until we can move on the targets." Targets? The people who paid to have Cole killed? The people inside Apex Dynamics? The people in this hospital who helped them? Evelyn thought of Martin's face, the way he'd looked at her with such cold certainty, like she was nothing. "How long have you known?" she asked. "About Cole, about the hospital?" "We've had surveillance on Apex for 6 weeks. Cole went dark 3 days ago. We tracked his emergency beacon to Riverside General 4 hours ago. By the time we mobilized, you'd already saved him." "And if I hadn't?" Dawson was quiet for a moment. "He'd be dead, and the case would be dead with him." The weight of that settled over her like a blanket. She'd saved a life tonight. She always had. But this time she'd saved more than one man. She'd saved an entire investigation. The Suburban took a hard turn, merging onto the highway. The city lights blurred past, smeared by rain. "Commander," one of the operators in the front seat said, his voice tight. "We've got a tail." Dawson leaned forward. "Vance?" 2 vehicles, black sedans. They picked us up at the hospital." "How many?" "At least 4 hostiles per vehicle." Dawson's jaw clenched. "They're not waiting for lawyers." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" "It means Vance doesn't work for the Department of Defense. He works for Apex, and they're not here to protect you. They're here to make sure you never testify." The operator driving didn't wait for orders. He accelerated hard, the Suburban surging forward. The convoy tightened formation, boxing Evelyn's vehicle in the center. "Call it in," Dawson said. "I want air support and local PD aware we've got hostiles in pursuit." "Already on it." Evelyn gripped the armrest as the vehicle swerved through traffic. Other cars blared their horns, skidding out of the way. Through the rear window, she could see the 2 sedans closing the gap. They moved with precision, weaving through lanes, gaining ground. "They're not going to stop," Dawson said quietly. "What are they going to do?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The first gunshot shattered the night. It punched through the rear windshield of the Suburban behind them, spiderwebbing the glass. The driver didn't flinch, just veered left, putting another vehicle between them and the shooters. "Contact rear," someone shouted over the radio. More gunfire erupted. Evelyn heard the sharp crack, crack, crack of rifles, the heavier thump of something bigger. The Suburban shook as rounds slammed into the armored panels. "Get down!" Dawson pushed her toward the floor, shielding her with his body. The world became noise, gunfire, shouting, the roar of engines. Evelyn pressed her hands over her ears, her mind screaming. "Return fire authorized," Dawson barked into his radio. The operators in the trailing vehicles opened up. Evelyn heard the distinctive rattle of automatic weapons, the high-pitched whine of rounds cutting through air. One of the sedans swerved hard, smoke pouring from its engine. It clipped a guardrail and spun out, disappearing into the darkness. But the second sedan kept coming. "They're trying to disable us," the driver shouted. "Don't let them box us in." The Suburban lurched right, taking an exit ramp at 70 miles per hour. The entire convoy followed, tires screaming. They plunged into an industrial district, warehouses and shipping yards, the streets narrow and poorly lit. The rain turned everything into a maze of shadows. "Where are we going?" Evelyn gasped. "Anywhere but here," Dawson said. The sedan was still on them, relentless. It pulled alongside the trailing Suburban, and Evelyn saw the window roll down. "RPG!" someone screamed. The rocket streaked through the rain like a comet. It missed the Suburban by inches, slamming into a warehouse wall and detonating in a ball of fire. Debris rained down, metal and concrete crashing onto the street. "Holy shit," Evelyn breathed. Dawson's face was stone. "These aren't contractors. They're mercenaries." The convoy split, 3 vehicles peeling off to engage the sedan, 3 staying with Evelyn. The gunfire became deafening, echoing off the warehouse walls. Evelyn saw muzzle flashes in the dark, saw men leaning out of windows, firing, saw one of the operators take a hit, slumping back into his seat. "Man down, Vehicle 3! Keep moving!" The Suburban Evelyn was in took a hard left, barreling down an alley so narrow the mirrors scraped the walls. They burst out the other side into a shipping yard, rows of containers stacked like metal mountains. "We need cover," the driver shouted. "There." Dawson pointed to a warehouse with an open bay door. They roared inside, the other 2 vehicles right behind them. The doors slammed shut, plunging them into darkness. For a moment there was only silence. Then the radio crackled. "Vehicle 3 is secure. Hostile sedan is down. No pursuit." Dawson exhaled slowly. "Status on our wounded?" Vest caught it. "He's shaken, but mobile." "Good. Hold position. I want a perimeter set and eyes on every entrance." The operators moved like ghosts, flowing out of the vehicles and disappearing into the shadows of the warehouse. Evelyn stayed in the Suburban, her whole body trembling. Dawson opened the door, offered her his hand. "You okay?" She nodded, even though it was a lie. She climbed out on shaking legs, looking around. The warehouse was massive. Concrete floors, rusted beams, the smell of oil and decay. Dim emergency lights cast everything in sickly green. "They tried to kill us," Evelyn said, her voice hollow. "They tried to kill you," Dawson corrected. "We're just in the way." "Why? I'm nobody. I'm just a nurse." "You're a witness. And right now, you're the most dangerous person in this city." Evelyn wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop the shaking. "What happens now?" "Now we wait for extraction. We've got a chopper inbound, ETA 20 minutes. We get you airborne, get you somewhere they can't reach you." "And then what?" "Then you tell your story. You testify. You help us bury these people." Evelyn looked at him, really looked at him. At the scar on his jaw, the lines around his eyes, the way he stood like the weight of the world was something he'd learned to carry. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Why does it matter so much?" Dawson was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his vest, pulled out a photograph. It was old, creased, the colors faded. It showed a young Marine in dress blues grinning at the camera. "Riley," Dawson said. "The Marine you saved in Kandahar. He was 22. He had a kid he'd never met, a fiancée waiting for him back home. You gave him a chance to meet his daughter, to marry the woman he loved. He's a father now, a husband. He's alive because you didn't give up on him." Evelyn's eyes burned. "You didn't know him," Dawson continued. "You didn't know if he was important, if he had people waiting, if his life mattered. You just saw someone who needed help, and you helped him. No paperwork, no authorization, no one telling you it was okay. You just did it." He put the photograph away. "That's why we're here, ma'am. Because people like you don't quit, and people like us don't forget." Evelyn couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. A voice crackled over the radio. "Commander, we've got a problem." Dawson's expression shifted instantly. "Talk to me." "Multiple vehicles approaching from the north and east, at least 12 hostiles. They're surrounding the warehouse." Evelyn's blood went cold. Dawson keyed his radio. "How long until extraction?" 15 minutes. "We don't have 15 minutes. He turned to Evelyn, his face grim. "Stay close to me. Do exactly what I say. Understood?" She nodded. The radio crackled again. "Commander, we're getting a call. It's coming through the emergency frequency." "Put it on speaker." There was a click, and then a voice filled the warehouse, smooth, calm, infuriatingly familiar. Marcus Vance. "Commander Dawson, I'm going to make this very simple. Send out Ms. Hart, and my men stand down. You and your team walk away. No one else has to die tonight." Dawson's jaw tightened. "Not happening." "Then you're condemning your men. I have 40 shooters out here. You have 12. The math isn't complicated." "Math doesn't account for skill." Vance laughed, a cold, clinical sound. "Skill won't stop bullets, Commander, and it won't stop what's about to happen if you make the wrong choice." Evelyn stepped forward before she could stop herself. "Let me talk to him." "Ma'am, let me talk to him." Dawson hesitated, then handed her the radio. Evelyn pressed the button, her voice steady, despite the fear clawing at her chest. "This is Evelyn Hart." There was a pause. Then Vance's voice came back, surprised. "Ms. Hart, I didn't expect you to be so cooperative." "I'm not cooperating. I'm telling you to leave." "I'm afraid I can't do that." "Why? Because I saved a man's life? Because I did my job?" "Because you're a problem, and problems get solved." Evelyn's anger flared, white hot and sudden. "You paid Martin Cross to let Cole Mercer die. You paid people in that hospital to look the other way while a man bled out. And when that didn't work, you sent mercenaries to kill me. All to protect what? Money? Weapons deals? You don't understand how the world works. I understand just fine. I understand that you're terrified of what I know. I understand that if I testify, you and everyone you work for goes to prison. And I understand that you're not going to stop me." Vance's voice turned ice cold. "You're wrong about that." The line went dead. Dawson took the radio back, his expression unreadable. "That was brave. Also incredibly stupid. I'm tired of being afraid." "Good, because we're about to fight." The operators had already moved into position, taking cover behind containers, setting up firing lanes, checking weapons. They moved with the kind of precision that came from doing this 1,000 times before. Dawson handed Evelyn a vest. "Put this on. Stay low. Stay behind cover. If shooting starts, you run for that office." He pointed to a small structure in the corner of the warehouse. "It's reinforced. Lock the door, and don't open it for anyone but me." "What if—" "No what ifs. You run. Understood?" She nodded, pulling the vest on. It was heavy, the weight strange and uncomfortable. The radio crackled. "Movement north side. They're coming." Dawson raised his rifle. "Hold fire until they breach. Make every shot count." The seconds stretched into eternity. Then the warehouse doors exploded inward. Flashbangs detonated, blinding white light and deafening noise. Men poured through the breach, rifles up, moving in tactical formation, and the world erupted into chaos. Gunfire filled the warehouse, a thunderous, overlapping roar that made Evelyn's ears ring. She saw muzzle flashes in the dark, saw operators returning fire with brutal efficiency. Bodies dropped, men screamed. The smell of gunpowder and blood filled the air. "Go!" Dawson shoved her toward the office. Evelyn ran. She sprinted across the warehouse floor, bullets snapping past her head, ricochets sparking off metal. She reached the office door, yanked it open, threw herself inside. She slammed the door, locked it, and collapsed against the wall. Outside, the battle raged. She could hear Dawson's voice shouting orders, hear the controlled bursts of his team's weapons, hear the screams of men going down. And then, through the small window in the door, she saw something that made her heart stop. A man in tactical gear was dragging one of Dawson's operators toward the back of the warehouse. The operator was wounded, unconscious, unable to fight back. They were taking prisoners. Evelyn's mind raced. If they captured one of Dawson's men, they could use him as leverage. Force a surrender. Kill everyone. She looked around the office. It was small, cluttered. Old desk, filing cabinets, tools scattered across a workbench. Her eyes landed on a fire axe mounted on the wall. She grabbed it. Her hand shook as she gripped the handle. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't trained for this. But she was a nurse, and nurses didn't let people die. Evelyn unlocked the door and stepped back into hell. The warehouse was a war zone. Smoke hung thick in the air. Bodies littered the floor. The gunfire had slowed, both sides taking cover, conserving ammunition. She moved along the wall, staying low, the axe heavy in her hands. The man dragging the operator had his back to her. He was big, focused on his captive, his rifle slung over his shoulder. Evelyn didn't think. She just moved. She swung the axe with everything she had. It caught him in the shoulder, not deep, but hard enough to make him scream and drop the operator. He spun, reaching for his sidearm. Evelyn swung again. This time she aimed for his weapon hand. The axe connected and his gun went flying. He lunged at her and she stumbled back, terror flooding her veins. Then Dawson was there. He came out of nowhere, slamming into the mercenary like a freight train. They hit the ground hard, struggling. Dawson's knife flashed once, twice. The mercenary went still. Dawson stood, breathing hard, and looked at Evelyn. "I told you to stay in the office. He was taking your man." For a moment, Dawson just stared at her. Then he nodded. "Get back inside, now." She ran. The battle shifted after that. Dawson's team tightened their perimeter, pushed back the attackers. The mercenaries had numbers, but they didn't have the skill or the will to die for Marcus Vance's money. Slowly, the gunfire died down. Then silence. Evelyn waited in the office, heart pounding, listening. The door opened. Dawson stood there, blood on his hands, exhaustion in his eyes. "It's over. They're retreating." "Your men?" "2 wounded, none critical. You saved Jensen's life out there." Evelyn felt her legs go weak. "Is he okay?" "He will be, thanks to you." Before she could respond, the sound of rotor blades filled the air. A helicopter descended through the broken skylight, landing in the center of the warehouse. "Extraction's here," Dawson said. "Time to go." He led her to the chopper, helped her inside. The interior was military grade. Benches, medical supplies, comm equipment. The wounded operator, Jensen, was already strapped in, conscious now, giving her a weak thumbs up. Dawson climbed in beside her. The helicopter lifted off, rising through the smoke and rain, leaving the warehouse and its dead behind. Evelyn looked out the window as Crestmont City fell away beneath them. Somewhere down there, Martin Cross was probably still making calls, still trying to save himself. Somewhere down there, Marcus Vance was regrouping, planning his next move. But up here, in this helicopter, surrounded by men who'd fought and bled to keep her alive, Evelyn Hart finally understood something. She wasn't replaceable. She never had been. The helicopter banked east, cutting through the storm. And then the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, tight with urgency. "Commander, we've got a priority distress call. It's coming from Ramstein Air Base. They're requesting immediate medical assistance. VIP casualty. Critical condition." Dawson leaned forward. "What VIP?" "General Marcus Hale, sir. He's been shot. They're 30,000 feet up, aircraft inbound, and he's bleeding out. They need a trauma surgeon, but the base is 40 minutes away. They won't make it." Dawson's face went pale. "Hale's leading the investigation into Apex. If he dies, the whole case dies with him," the pilot finished. Everyone in the helicopter turned to look at Evelyn. She met Dawson's eyes, saw the question there, saw the desperate hope. "How long until they land?" she asked. "They won't land. They can't risk it. Hostile aircraft in the region. They're staying airborne until they reach secure airspace. Evelyn's pulse hammered in her ears. Then someone has to operate on him in the air. Dawson's voice was quiet. We don't have a surgeon. No, Evelyn said, her hands already steady, her mind already shifting into the cold, clear space where fear didn't exist. But you have me. The helicopter banked hard, changing course. Through the windscreen, Evelyn could see another aircraft in the distance, a C-130 transport plane, its running lights cutting through the storm like stars fallen sideways. ETA to intercept, 3 minutes, the pilot called back. Dawson was already moving, pulling medical supplies from the compartments lining the helicopter's interior. What do you need? Evelyn's mind shifted into the space she'd lived in for 17 years, the place where panic didn't exist, where there was only the problem and the solution. Everything you have. Trauma kit, IV supplies, surgical instruments if you've got them. And I need to know what we're dealing with. Dawson keyed his radio. This is Unit Omega to Ramstein Transport. What's the general status? A voice came back, strained and young. Gunshot wound to the upper left quadrant. Entry and exit. Massive blood loss. We've got pressure on it, but he's going into shock. Pulse 140 and climbing. Blood pressure 70/40 and dropping. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Those numbers meant the general was circling the drain fast. How long has he been down? 22 minutes. She did the math in her head. In 22 minutes, a man could bleed out completely if the wound hit the right vessels. The fact that he was still alive meant someone on that plane knew enough to keep pressure on the wound. But pressure alone wouldn't save him. Tell them to keep the pressure constant and get 2 large-bore IVs in him if they haven't already. Push fluids wide open, and I need to know if the exit wound is larger than the entry. There was a pause. Then the voice came back. Affirmative. Exit wound is significantly larger. We're seeing tissue damage. That's the bullet fragmenting, Evelyn said, more to herself than anyone else. It hit something solid, probably a rib. Pieces went through the liver or spleen. Dawson's expression darkened. Can you fix that in the air? I don't know. But if I don't try, he dies anyway. The helicopter closed the distance. Evelyn could see the C-130 clearly now, a massive military transport, its cargo ramp partially open, buffeted by wind and rain. They're going to match our speed and altitude, the pilot said. But it's going to be rough. We're flying through a storm at 20,000 feet. Any turbulence could... I get it, Evelyn cut him off. How do I get over there? Dawson pointed to a harness system mounted near the door. We'll zip line you across. It's a 40-foot span. You'll be clipped in, but if the line snaps or the planes drift, then I fall 20,000 feet. I understand. Jensen, the wounded operator she'd saved, spoke up from his bench. Ma'am, with respect, you don't have to do this. We can divert to Ramstein, get a real surgeon. There's no time. Evelyn's voice was steady. And I am a real nurse. Dawson handed her the harness. Put this on, tight as you can. She stripped off the tactical vest and pulled the harness over her scrubs. The straps bit into her shoulders and thighs, the metal clips cold against her skin. Dawson checked every connection twice, his hands efficient and sure. You've done this before? Evelyn asked. Not with a nurse performing surgery at the other end. He met her eyes. You're sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. The helicopter's side door slid open, and the world became wind and noise and freezing rain. Evelyn's breath was ripped away. She gripped the frame, staring out at the C-130 as it drew alongside them. The cargo ramp was open, and she could see figures inside, soldiers, medics, all of them waiting. Launching the line, one of Dawson's operators shouted. He fired a pneumatic launcher, and a cable shot across the gap, locking into a receiver on the C-130's ramp. The line went taut, vibrating in the wind. Dawson clipped Evelyn's harness to a pulley system. When I say go, you jump. The pulley will carry you across. Do not look down. Do not let go. Understood? Her heart was a jackhammer. Understood. On 3. 1. Evelyn jumped. The world dropped away. For a single, horrifying moment, she was suspended in nothing. 20,000 feet of empty air beneath her, the storm tearing at her clothes, the rotors screaming overhead. Then the pulley caught, and she was sliding across the line, fast and rough, the wind trying to rip her loose. She saw the C-130's ramp rushing toward her. Hands grabbed her, yanking her inside. She hit the deck hard, gasping, and the soldiers unclipped her harness. "You the nurse?" one of them shouted over the roar of the engines. She nodded, still trying to catch her breath. "This way!" They pulled her deeper into the aircraft. The interior was cavernous, rows of seats, cargo netting, equipment strapped down. And in the center, on a makeshift stretcher, lay General Marcus Hale. He was in his 50s, gray-haired, his uniform soaked with blood. Two medics knelt beside him, one holding pressure on the wound, the other managing the IVs. Evelyn dropped to her knees beside them. "Report." 2 IVs in, running lactated ringers wide open, bleeding slowed but not stopped. He's tachycardic, hypotensive, and his oxygen saturation is dropping. We gave him morphine for the pain, but he's still conscious. Evelyn looked at the general's face. His eyes were open, glassy with shock but aware. "General Hale," she said clearly. "My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm a trauma nurse. I'm going to keep you alive. Do you understand?" He managed a weak nod. "Good. I need you to stay with me. Don't close your eyes. Don't give up." She turned to the medics. "Get me a trauma kit. I need surgical clamps, hemostats, suture material, and the strongest local anesthetic you have. And someone find me something I can use as a retractor." They moved fast, pulling supplies from lockers and medical bags. Evelyn peeled back the blood-soaked bandages, exposing the wound. It was bad. The entry wound was small, a neat hole just below the rib cage. But the exit wound was a ragged tear the size of her fist, the edges torn and bleeding. She could see exposed muscle, fragments of bone, the dark gleam of internal organs. "Liver laceration," she muttered. "Possibly splenic involvement. I need light. Get me every flashlight you have." Soldiers scrambled, returning with handheld lights. They positioned themselves around her, illuminating the wound. Evelyn took a breath, steadying herself. She'd done this before, not in a plane, not at altitude, but in field hospitals where the supplies were limited and the stakes were life and death. This was the same, just worse. She injected the local anesthetic around the wound margins, then took the scalpel one of the medics handed her. "Hold him steady," she said. "This is going to hurt." She began to debride the wound, cutting away the damaged tissue, exposing the bleeding vessels beneath. The general groaned, his body tensing. "I know," Evelyn said quietly. "I know it hurts, but I need you to stay still." Blood welled up, obscuring her view. She grabbed gauze, packed the wound, applied pressure. "Clamp," she said. A medic slapped a hemostat into her hand. She worked by feel as much as sight, probing through torn tissue, finding the severed artery, clamping it shut. The bleeding slowed. "Suture." She began to close the vessel, her stitches small and precise despite the turbulence that rocked the plane every few seconds. The aircraft lurched suddenly, dropping 50 feet in an air pocket. Evelyn's stomach flipped, but her hands didn't waver. She finished the suture, tied it off. "Next one," she said. There were 3 more bleeders, smaller but still lethal if left untreated. She clamped and sutured each one, working methodically, blocking out the noise and chaos around her. One of the soldiers spoke up, his voice tight. "We've got a problem." Evelyn didn't look up. "What kind of problem?" "Hostile aircraft, 2 MiGs inbound from the east. They're demanding we land or they'll engage." Her hands froze for half a second, then she kept working. "How long until they reach us?" 4 minutes. "Then you've got 4 minutes to deal with it. I'm busy." Dawson's voice crackled over the radio. "Ramstein Transport, this is Unit Omega. We're reading the same threat. Request permission to provide escort." The pilot's voice came back. "Negative Omega. You're not equipped for air-to-air. Suggest you break off." "Not leaving her." The general coughed, blood flecking his lips. Evelyn's pulse spiked. "He's choking," one of the medics said. "Airways compromised." Evelyn swore under her breath. "Roll him on his side. Clear his mouth." They turned him carefully, and blood poured out. The general gasped, his breathing ragged. "He's got blood in his lungs," Evelyn said. "The bullet must have nicked the diaphragm. He needs a chest tube." We don't have a chest tube kit. Then improvise. She looked around, grabbed a length of IV tubing and a scalpel. Hold him steady. She made a small incision between the general's ribs, pushed the tubing through, and blood drained out in a thick rush. The general's breathing eased immediately. Secure that tube, Evelyn ordered, and keep monitoring his SATS. The radio crackled again. MIGs are closing, 2 minutes. Evelyn ignored it. She packed the abdominal wound with hemostatic gauze, then began to close the skin, layer by layer. The plane shook violently, and one of the lights fell, shattering on the deck. Are they firing on us? Someone shouted. Warning shots, the pilot called back. They're trying to force us down. Evelyn tied off the final suture. How's his pressure? 80/50. It's coming up. Heart rate? 120. Still high, but stable. She sat back on her heels, exhausted, her hands slick with blood. He's stable. For now. But he needs a hospital, real surgeons, a CT scan to check for internal bleeding I couldn't see. One of the medics gripped her shoulder. You just saved his life, ma'am. The radio erupted with noise. MIGs are breaking off. Repeat, hostiles are breaking off. Evelyn looked up, confused. Why? Dawson's voice came through calm and steady. Because I just got word from JSOC. 2 F-22s out of Ramstein are inbound. The MiGs saw them on radar and decided they didn't want that fight. Relief flooded through her, so intense it made her dizzy. ETA to Ramstein, 12 minutes, the pilot announced. Evelyn looked down at the general. His eyes were still open, still aware. You're going to make it, she told him. You hear me? You're going to make it. He nodded weakly, and something that might have been a smile touched his lips. The next 12 minutes were the longest of Evelyn's life. She stayed with the general, monitoring his vitals, adjusting his IVs, watching for any sign of deterioration. The medics worked alongside her, following her orders without question. When Ramstein finally appeared below them, a sprawling airbase lit up like a city, Evelyn felt something in her chest unclench. The C-130 touched down hard, taxiing fast toward the medical center. The moment the wheels stopped, the ramp dropped, and a team of doctors and nurses swarmed aboard. Gunshot wound, upper left quadrant, liver and possible splenic laceration, surgically stabilized in flight, Evelyn rattled off as they transferred the general to a gurney. 3 vessel repairs, 1 chest tube placed for hemothorax. He's had 2 liters of ringers and 4 milligrams of morphine. The lead surgeon stared at her. You did all this in the air? I did what I had to. They wheeled the general away at a run, and Evelyn stood there on the tarmac, swaying slightly, her scrubs stiff with dried blood. Dawson's helicopter touched down beside the C-130. He jumped out, jogging over to her. You okay? He asked. She nodded, even though her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. The general? He'll live, if he gets the care he needs. Dawson exhaled, something like awe in his expression. You just performed surgery at 20,000 feet in a storm with hostile aircraft trying to shoot you down. I just did my job. That wasn't a job. That was a miracle. Before Evelyn could respond, another figure approached. A woman in a crisp Air Force uniform, her expression sharp and assessing. Ms. Hart, the woman said. Yes, Colonel Rachel Voss, Ramstein Base Commander. I need to speak with you, privately. Dawson tensed. Colonel, with respect, Ms. Hart has been through... I'm aware, Commander. This won't take long. Voss gestured toward a building near the flight line. Evelyn followed, exhaustion weighing her down like lead. Inside, the building was sterile and cold, a briefing room with a long table and no windows. Voss closed the door behind them. Sit, Voss said. Evelyn sat. Voss remained standing, her hands clasped behind her back. I'm going to be blunt, Ms. Hart. What you did tonight, saving General Hale, just kept an entire military investigation from collapsing. He's been leading the case against Apex Dynamics for 8 months. If he died, the DoD would have buried the whole thing to avoid the political fallout. I didn't save him for an investigation, Evelyn said quietly. I saved him because he was dying. I know. That's what makes you valuable. Voss sat down across from her. We need your testimony, not just about Cole Mercer, about what happened at Riverside General. About the corruption, the payoffs, the people who tried to kill you to keep you quiet. I'll testify. It's not that simple. Apex has reach. They have lawyers, politicians, media contacts. The moment you go public, they'll destroy you. Your credibility, your reputation, your life. They'll paint you as unstable, unreliable, a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Let them try. Voss leaned forward. You don't understand. They've already started. In the last 3 hours, Riverside General has released a statement claiming you were terminated for gross misconduct, including theft of hospital property and endangering a patient. Martin Cross has filed a lawsuit against you for defamation. Marcus Vance's lawyers are preparing a motion to have your testimony excluded on the grounds that you're compromised. The words hit like punches. They're trying to bury me before I can even speak, Evelyn said. Yes. So what do I do? Voss pulled a folder from her briefcase, slid it across the table. You fight back. You go on record. You let the world see exactly what happened, and you do it now, before they can spin the narrative. Evelyn opened the folder. Inside were documents, affidavits, witness statements, medical records, and a single photograph. It showed Martin Cross shaking hands with Marcus Vance outside Riverside General. The timestamp was 3 weeks ago. Where did you get this? Evelyn asked. General Hale's team has been building this case for months. They have emails, financial records, recordings, everything needed to prove Apex paid off hospital staff to let Cole Mercer die. But without your testimony, without someone who can put a face to the corruption, it's just data. Evelyn stared at the photograph, at Martin's smug face, at Vance's cold smile. When do I testify? She asked. Tomorrow, 1000 hours, the DOD is convening an emergency hearing. It'll be closed door, but the transcripts will be made public. Once you go on record, there's no taking it back. I understand. Voss stood. Get some rest, Ms. Hart. You've earned it. Evelyn didn't feel like she'd earned anything. She felt like she'd been thrown into a war she didn't understand and somehow survived the first battle. But the war wasn't over. Dawson was waiting for her outside the briefing room. What did Voss say? I testify tomorrow. Good. He paused. You should know. Cole Mercer woke up an hour ago. He's asking for you. Evelyn's heart skipped. He's awake? Stable, conscious. The doctors say he'll make a full recovery. Take me to him. They walked across the base to the medical center, a sprawling complex of white buildings and sterile hallways. Cole Mercer was in a private room, hooked up to monitors, his torso wrapped in bandages, but his eyes were clear. He looked up as Evelyn entered, and something like relief crossed his face. You're the nurse, he said, his voice rough. Evelyn Hart. Cole Mercer. He managed a weak smile. I hear you saved my life. Twice. Just doing my job. That's what they all say. He shifted slightly, wincing. I also hear you pissed off some very dangerous people to keep me alive. They were already pissed off. Cole laughed, then groaned, clutching his side. Don't make me laugh. It hurts. Evelyn stepped closer. How much do you remember? Enough. I was gathering evidence on Apex, got burned, took a bullet, ended up at Riverside. After that, it's patchy. They tried to let you die. I didn't let them. Cole's expression sobered. Why? Because you needed help. He studied her for a long moment. You know they're going to come after you. Apex doesn't forgive loose ends. I know. And you're still going to testify. I am. Cole nodded slowly. Then I owe you more than my life. I owe you the truth. He reached for a tablet on the bedside table, winced, gave up. In that tablet is everything I collected. Names, transactions, communications, proof that Apex sold weapons tech to foreign governments, proof that they bribed hospital staff, police, even federal contractors. It's all there. Evelyn took the tablet. Why are you giving this to me? Because if something happens to me, someone needs to make sure it gets out. And I trust you more than I trust anyone else right now. Before Evelyn could respond, the door burst open. A nurse rushed in, her face pale. We have a code black. Intruders on the base. Armed. They're heading for the medical center. Dawson's hand went to his sidearm. How many? At least 6. Security's engaged, but gunfire echoed in the distance. Dawson grabbed Evelyn's arm. We need to move, now. What about Cole? I'll get him, one of the medics said, already releasing the brakes on Cole's bed. They ran. The hallways were chaos. Alarms blaring, staff scrambling, patients being moved to secure wings. Dawson led them through a maze of corridors, his weapon drawn. More gunfire. Closer now. They're in the building, Dawson said grimly. They turned a corner and came face to face with 2 men in tactical gear. Not soldiers. Mercenaries. Dawson fired first. The hallway exploded with noise. Evelyn dropped to the floor, covering her head. She heard Dawson's weapon bark 3 times, heard bodies hit the ground. Clear, Dawson shouted. Move! They kept running, deeper into the medical center. Behind them, more mercenaries appeared, their boots pounding on the tile. Dawson kicked open a door marked Authorized Personnel Only and shoved them inside. It was a storage room, shelves of supplies, medical equipment, no other exit. A trap. Barricade the door, Dawson ordered. They shoved a shelving unit against it just as the mercenaries reached it. The door shuddered under the impact of bodies slamming against it. How many rounds do you have? Evelyn asked. Dawson checked his magazine. 12s. And there are at least 6 of them out there. I can count. The door shook again, harder. They're going to breach, Cole said from his bed, his face tight with pain. Dawson reloaded, raised his weapon. Then we make them pay for it. Evelyn looked around the room, her mind racing. Shelves, supplies, medical equipment, and then she saw it. An oxygen tank, industrial size, high pressure. Commander, she said, how good's your aim? He followed her gaze, saw the tank, understood immediately. Get behind something solid, he said. Evelyn and the medics dragged Cole's bed behind a heavy metal cabinet. Dawson positioned himself near the door, weapon trained on the oxygen tank. The door splintered. The mercenaries poured through. Dawson fired. The bullet hit the oxygen tank dead center. The explosion was deafening. Fire and shrapnel tore through the room. The mercenaries were thrown back, their bodies crumpling. The walls shook. The lights went out. When the smoke cleared, Evelyn's ears were ringing, her lungs burning, but she was alive. Dawson pulled her to her feet. You okay? She nodded, coughing. Cole groaned from behind the cabinet. Remind me never to doubt a nurse with a plan. They stumbled out of the ruined room into the hallway. Base security was flooding the area now, weapons drawn, securing the scene. Colonel Voss appeared, her uniform singed, her expression thunderous. What the hell happened? She demanded. Apex sent a kill team, Dawson said flatly. They wanted Hart and Mercer dead before tomorrow's hearing. Voss's jaw tightened. They just declared war on the United States military. She pulled out her radio. This is Voss. I want every entrance to this base locked down. I want aerial surveillance up. And I want federal agents here within the hour. No one touches these witnesses. She looked at Evelyn. You're under full protection now. Armed guards. Secure location. Nothing gets to you. Evelyn met her eyes. I'm still testifying. Damn right you are. Voss turned to Dawson. Commander, your team just earned a commendation and a lot of overtime. Dawson actually smiled. We'll take the overtime. As they led Evelyn away to a secure wing, she looked back at the destroyed storage room, at the bodies of the men who'd tried to kill her. 24 hours ago, she'd been a nurse fired for saving a life. Now she was a witness under military protection, holding evidence that could bring down one of the largest defense contractors in the world. And tomorrow, she would tell the truth, no matter who tried to stop her. But as they reached the secure wing, Evelyn's phone, somehow still in her pocket, buzzed. A single text message from an unknown number. It read, You should have stayed quiet. Now everyone you've ever cared about pays the price. Attached was a photo of her apartment building, engulfed in flames. The phone slipped from Evelyn's hand, clattering against the floor. Dawson snatched it up, his face darkening as he saw the image. The apartment building, her apartment building, consumed by fire, flames pouring from windows, smoke billowing into the night sky. When was this taken? He demanded. Evelyn couldn't speak. Her throat had closed. That building held everything she owned, photos of her mother, her nursing certificates, 17 years of memories. And Mrs. Chen, the elderly widow on the third floor who could barely walk. And David Kim, the college student next door who always borrowed her Wi-Fi. And the Martinez family with their 2 young children. How many people live there? Dawson's voice cut through her paralysis. 32 units, Evelyn whispered. Maybe 70 people. Dawson was already on his radio. This is Commander Dawson. I need emergency services at... He looked at Evelyn. 1247 Riverside Avenue, Crestmont City, she managed. 1247 Riverside Avenue, Crestmont City. Structure fire. Possible arson. Possible casualties. Colonel Voss appeared, her expression grim. I just got word. Fire department's on scene. They're evacuating now. Casualties? Evelyn asked, her voice breaking. Unknown, but the fire started on the ground floor, spread fast. Accelerant was used. Evelyn's knees buckled. Dawson caught her before she hit the ground. They burned it, she said. They burned it because of me. They burned it because they're desperate, Voss corrected. Because you're winning. Winning? Evelyn's laugh was bitter and sharp. People might be dead because I saved a patient. How is that winning? Voss knelt down, meeting her eyes. You listen to me. Apex Dynamics has killed 17 people in the last 8 months to protect their business. Journalists, whistleblowers, a federal prosecutor who got too close. They burned your building to scare you into silence. But here's what they don't understand. They just committed domestic terrorism on U.S. soil. They just handed us everything we need to put them away forever. Evelyn shook her head. That doesn't bring those people back. No, it doesn't. But testifying tomorrow will make sure their deaths mean something. The word settled over her like weight. Evelyn closed her eyes, forcing herself to breathe. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. This is just the beginning. Withdraw your testimony or we burn everything you've ever touched. Dawson read it over her shoulder. They're bluffing. Are they? Evelyn looked up at him. They just torched an apartment building. What's next? The hospital where I used to work? The shelter where I volunteer? How many people have to suffer because of me? None of this is because of you, Dawson said firmly. This is because of them. You're just the one brave enough to stand up. Before Evelyn could respond, a young officer burst into the corridor. Colonel Voss, you need to see this. It's on every news channel. Voss pulled out her phone, pulled up a live news feed. The screen showed Evelyn's apartment building, fully engulfed. Fire trucks surrounded it, firefighters battling the blaze. But that wasn't what made Evelyn's blood run cold. It was the reporter's words. Sources say the fire may be connected to Evelyn Hart, a former nurse at Riverside General Hospital who was terminated earlier today for theft and misconduct. Hospital administrators claim Hart threatened staff members after her dismissal and may have started the fire in retaliation. That's a lie, Evelyn shouted. The reporter continued. Police have issued a warrant for Hart's questioning in connection with the blaze, which has displaced dozens of families and left at least 3 people hospitalized with smoke inhalation. Voss shut off the feed. They're framing you. They're destroying me, Evelyn corrected. Dawson's jaw was tight. We need to get ahead of this. Now. We put out a statement. We tell the truth. Statements won't matter, Voss said. Not when Apex controls the narrative. They own media outlets. They have PR firms on retainer. By morning, every news channel in the country will be running stories about the troubled nurse who endangered patients and burned down her own building. Then what do we do? Evelyn asked. Voss's expression hardened. We move up the hearing. We get you on record tonight. We make your testimony public before they can bury you. Can you do that? I can make one call. Voss pulled out her phone, stepped away. Evelyn sank into a chair, her mind reeling. 24 hours ago, her biggest worry had been finishing her shift. Now she was a fugitive accused of arson, hiding on a military base while a defense contractor tried to kill her. Dawson sat down beside her. You're still thinking about backing down? It wasn't a question. I'm thinking about Mrs. Chen, Evelyn said quietly. She's 78 years old. She has arthritis so bad she can barely make it down the stairs. If she was in that building when it started, then you testifying will make sure the people who did it answer for it. Or it gets more people killed. Dawson was silent for a long moment. Then he said, You remember what I told you about Riley? The Marine you saved in Kandahar? Evelyn nodded. He wasn't supposed to make it. The surgeon said his wounds were too severe, the damage too extensive. But you didn't listen. You clamped that artery, you kept him breathing, you fought for him when everyone else had given up. And because of that, he's alive. He has a daughter now, Emma. She's 4 years old. She exists because you didn't quit. He leaned forward, his voice low and intense. Apex is counting on you to quit. They're counting on you to look at the destruction, at the casualties, and decide it's not worth it. But if you quit, they win. And if they win, they keep selling weapons to people who shouldn't have them. They keep bribing officials. They keep killing anyone who gets in their way. And that 4-year-old girl? She grows up in a world where monsters like Apex get away with it. Evelyn met his eyes. You're asking me to be brave. I'm asking you to be what you've always been, a woman who saves lives. Voss returned, her expression grim but determined. It's done. Emergency hearing convenes at 0300 hours. That's 90 minutes from now. We'll have federal judges, DOD officials, and a full media blackout until testimony is complete. Once you're on record, we release everything simultaneously. Your testimony, Cole's evidence, the financial records. We hit them with everything at once. Will it work? Evelyn asked. It has to. The next hour was a blur. Evelyn was moved to a secure conference room deep inside the base. The walls were soundproofed, the windows bulletproof. Armed guards stood at every entrance. A lawyer appeared, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Reeves who specialized in federal prosecutions. I need to prep you, Patricia said, sitting down across from Evelyn. The panel will ask you questions about what happened at Riverside General. They'll ask about Cole Mercer, about Martin Cross, about the medication you administered. You tell them the truth. All of it. Don't embellish, don't minimize. Just facts. What if they don't believe me? They'll believe you. We have the evidence to back up everything you say, but your testimony puts a face to the corruption. It makes it real. Patricia walked her through the process, the questions she'd be asked, the format of the hearing, the people who would be in the room. Remember, Patricia said, you're not on trial. You're a witness. You're there to tell the truth. Nothing more. Nothing less. Evelyn nodded, though her hands were shaking. At 02:45 hours, they led her to the hearing room. It was smaller than she'd expected, a simple conference room with a long table, recording equipment, and 5 people waiting, 3 federal judges, a DOD investigator, and a court reporter. Evelyn sat down in the single chair facing them. The lights were bright, clinical. She felt exposed. The lead judge, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair, spoke first. Ms. Hart, thank you for coming. I'm Judge Catherine Moreno. This is an emergency closed-door hearing convened under federal authority to investigate allegations of corruption, conspiracy, and domestic terrorism connected to Apex Dynamics and Riverside General Hospital. Your testimony will be recorded and entered into the federal record. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Do you swear to tell the truth? Evelyn placed her hand on the Bible they offered, then hesitated. I do. Please state your full name and occupation for the record. Evelyn Marie Hart. I'm a registered nurse. I was employed at Riverside General Hospital until... She paused. Until yesterday. Tell us what happened. And Evelyn did. She told them about the patient in bed 12, about his crashing vitals, about the restricted medication she'd used to save his life, about Martin Cross firing her, humiliating her, having her escorted out by security. She told them about the Navy SEALs arriving, about learning the patient was Cole Mercer, an undercover operative, about the mercenaries who'd tried to kill her. She told them about the photograph of Martin Cross and Marcus Vance, about the evidence Cole had collected, about the fire at her apartment building. She told them everything. The judges listened without interruption, their faces impassive. The court reporter's fingers flew across the keys. When Evelyn finished, Judge Moreno leaned forward. Ms. Hart, you understand that by giving this testimony, you're putting yourself at considerable risk. I understand. And you're prepared to stand by everything you've said here tonight. I am. Moreno nodded. Thank you. Your testimony is now part of the federal record. She gestured to the DOD investigator. Mr. Shaw, you have questions? Shaw was a compact man with thinning hair and the eyes of someone who'd seen too much. "Mrs. Hart, you said you recognized Marcus Vance from a photograph. Can you identify him if you saw him again?" "Yes." Shaw pulled out a tablet, pulled up a photo. "Is this the man?" Evelyn looked at the screen. Marcus Vance stared back at her. Same silver hair, same cold smile. "That's him." "For the record, you're identifying Marcus Vance, Senior Vice President of Security Operations at Apex Dynamics." Shaw pulled up another photo. "And is this Martin Cross?" "Yes." "When Mr. Cross fired you, did he give a reason beyond the protocol violation?" Evelyn thought back to that cold office, to Martin's contemptuous face. "He said I was a liability, that I didn't follow the chain of command, that I'd been walking a thin line for a long time." "Did he ever explicitly mention Cole Mercer or Apex Dynamics?" "No, but he was very insistent that the patient, Cole, shouldn't receive aggressive treatment. He ordered conservative care only." "Despite the patient's deteriorating condition?" "Yes." Shaw made a note. "One final question. If you had known that saving Cole Mercer would put you in danger, would you still have done it?" Evelyn didn't hesitate. "Yes." "Why?" "Because he was dying, and I'm a nurse. I don't let people die." Shaw nodded slowly. No further questions. Judge Moreno looked at her fellow judges. They conferred quietly, then she turned back to Evelyn. "Ms. Hart, this panel finds your testimony credible and substantiated by the evidence provided. We are issuing warrants for the arrest of Martin Cross, Marcus Vance, and 17 other individuals connected to Apex Dynamics and Riverside General Hospital. Federal agents are already en route to execute those warrants." Evelyn felt something crack open in her chest. "Additionally," Moreno continued, "we are issuing a formal commendation for your actions in saving both Cole Mercer and General Marcus Hale. Your courage under fire reflects the highest standards of the medical profession." Evelyn couldn't speak. Tears blurred her vision. "You're dismissed, Ms. Hart, and thank you." Patricia helped her out of the room. Dawson was waiting in the hallway. "It's done," Evelyn said. "I know, and it's already going public." He held up his phone. The screen showed a breaking news alert. "Federal warrants issued in Apex Dynamics corruption scandal. Dozens arrested." The story was everywhere, major networks, news websites, social media. The photographs of Martin Cross and Marcus Vance were plastered across every screen, accompanied by headlines like "Defense Contractor Accused of Domestic Terrorism" and "Hospital Administrator Charged with Conspiracy to Commit Murder." "They're going down," Dawson said. "All of them." Evelyn should have felt relief. Victory, something. Instead, she just felt tired. But the night wasn't over. At 04:47 hours, federal agents raided Martin Cross's home in Crestmont City. Evelyn watched the live footage on the news, agents in tactical gear storming through the front door, Cross being led out in handcuffs, still in his pajamas, his face pale with shock. The reporter's voice was almost gleeful. "Martin Cross, former night administrator at Riverside General Hospital, has been arrested on charges of conspiracy, bribery, and accessory to attempted murder." Sources say Cross accepted over $200,000 from Apex Dynamics to ensure the death of an undercover federal operative. Evelyn turned off the feed. "You don't want to watch?" Dawson asked. "I've seen enough." But 20 minutes later, she turned it back on. Because Marcus Vance was being arrested. It happened at Apex Dynamics headquarters, a gleaming tower in downtown Crestmont City. Federal agents had surrounded the building, shutting down every exit. Vance tried to run. The cameras caught him emerging from a side entrance flanked by private security. But the moment he stepped outside, agents swarmed him. He went down hard, face pressed against the pavement, hands cuffed behind his back. The reporter could barely contain her excitement. "Marcus Vance, senior executive at Apex Dynamics, has just been arrested on charges including domestic terrorism, conspiracy to commit murder, and weapons trafficking. This is a stunning fall for a man who just hours ago was—" Evelyn turned it off again, this time for good. "How do you feel?" Dawson asked quietly. "Like I should feel something. Relief, satisfaction, justice." She shook her head. "But I just keep thinking about the people in my building, about whether they made it out." "They did." Evelyn looked up sharply. "What?" Dawson pulled out his phone, pulled up a news article. "Fire department report just came in. 73 people evacuated. 3 hospitalized for smoke inhalation. All stable. 0 fatalities. The relief hit her like a wave. Mrs. Chen? Safe. She was one of the first out. Evelyn pressed her hands to her face, feeling the tears come. Not from sadness this time. From exhaustion. From the sheer weight of everything lifting all at once. They're okay, she whispered. They're all okay. Because the fire department got there fast. Because your neighbors helped each other. Because people are stronger than Apex gave them credit for. Evelyn wiped her eyes. What happens now? Now you rest. Tomorrow, later today, technically, you'll need to give additional statements. Work with prosecutors. Probably testify in actual court when the trials start. Trials. Plural. Martin Cross, Marcus Vance, 17 others. This is going to take months. Maybe years. And what about me? Do I get my life back? Dawson was quiet for a moment. Your apartment's gone. Your job's gone. Your name's been dragged through the mud on every news channel in the country. So no, you don't get your old life back. The honesty hurt, but Evelyn appreciated it. But, Dawson continued, you get something better. You get to decide what comes next. On your terms, not theirs. Before Evelyn could respond, Colonel Voss appeared. Miss Hart, there's someone here to see you. Who? Come with me. Voss led her through the base to a private medical room. Inside, General Marcus Hale sat propped up in bed, looking pale but alert. Tubes and monitors surrounded him, but his eyes were clear. Ms. Hart, he said, his voice rough but strong. I wanted to thank you personally. The doctors tell me you performed surgery on me at 20,000 feet while hostile aircraft tried to shoot us down. Evelyn felt her cheeks flush. I did what needed to be done, sir. You saved my life. And in doing so, you saved this investigation. Without my testimony, Apex would have buried this. But because of you, we're going to dismantle their entire operation. I'm glad I could help. Hale gestured to the chair beside his bed. Sit, please. Evelyn sat. I've been in the military for 32 years, Hale said. I've seen courage in a lot of forms. Soldiers charging into enemy fire. Pilots flying missions they knew they wouldn't survive. But what you did, standing up to a system designed to crush you, saving lives when it cost you everything, that's a different kind of courage, the rarest kind. I was just being a nurse. You were being a hero. Evelyn shook her head. Heroes don't get people's homes burned down. Heroes make hard choices and live with the consequences. Hale leaned forward slightly, wincing. I want to offer you something. A position, off the books, working with military medical units that operate in hostile environments, places where the rulebook doesn't matter, only results. Evelyn stared at him. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a purpose, a chance to keep doing what you do best, saving lives, without bureaucrats and administrators and people like Martin Cross getting in your way. I don't know anything about military medicine. You know how to think under pressure. You know how to make impossible decisions. You know how to save a man's life with limited supplies in the worst conditions imaginable. Hale smiled. That's exactly what we need. Evelyn looked down at her hands. They were still stained with blood. His blood. Cole's blood. The blood of everyone she'd fought to save in the last 24 hours. Can I think about it? She asked. Take all the time you need, but the offer stands. As Evelyn left the room, her mind was spinning. A job, a new life, a purpose. But first, she had something else to do. She found a phone, dialed a number she'd memorized years ago. Riverside General Hospital, how may I direct your call? This is Evelyn Hart. I need to speak with Dr. Sarah Brennan. Tell her it's urgent. There was a pause. Miss Hart, I'm not sure Dr. Brennan is available. Tell her I'm calling about Martin Cross. She'll take the call. Another pause. Then hold music. 2 minutes later, a familiar voice came on the line. Evelyn, what the hell is going on? The news is saying Martin's been arrested, that you... It's all true, Sarah, every word. Dr. Sarah Brennan had been at Riverside for 12 years. She was one of the few doctors who'd ever listened to Evelyn's concerns. who treated nurses like colleagues instead of subordinates. Martin was taking bribes, Evelyn said, from a defense contractor. They paid him to let a federal operative die. And when I saved that patient, they tried to kill me. My God. I need you to do something for me. I need you to look at the records for bed 12 from last night, Cole Mercer. I need you to confirm that my treatment saved his life, that without it, he would have died. Evelyn, you don't have to prove, yes, I do, because Riverside released a statement saying I was fired for misconduct, that I endangered a patient. I need you to go on record and tell the truth. There was a long silence. Then Sarah said, I'll do it. I'll review the records and give a statement. You saved his life. Everyone here knows it. Everyone who matters, anyway. Thank you. Evelyn, I'm sorry. For not speaking up when Martin fired you, for not defending you. You're speaking up now. That's what matters. Evelyn hung up, feeling something settle in her chest. The sun was rising over Ramstein Air Base. Through the windows, she could see the first light touching the runway, turning everything gold. Dawson found her there, standing at the window. You should get some sleep, he said. I'm not tired. You've been awake for 36 hours. I know. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Dawson said, Riley wants to meet you, the Marine you saved in Kandahar. He heard what happened. He's flying in tomorrow. Evelyn's breath caught. He doesn't have to. He wants to. He wants to say thank you in person. Okay? And General Hale's offer, you thinking about taking it? I don't know. Maybe. It's a lot to process. Dawson nodded. For what it's worth, you'd be good at it. The best, probably. How do you know? Because you don't quit, no matter what they throw at you. Evelyn turned to look at him. I wanted to quit. Last night, when I saw my building burning, I wanted to walk away from all of it. But you didn't. No, I didn't. That's the difference between people like you and people like Martin Cross. When it gets hard, you dig deeper. He just sells out. Evelyn smiled, small, tired, but real. Her phone buzzed. Another news alert. Former Riverside General Administrator Martin Cross attempts suicide in custody, hospitalized under guard. Evelyn read it twice, felt nothing. Then she deleted it. Come on, Dawson said. I'll walk you to your quarters. You need rest. In a minute. She pulled up one more article. This one from the Crestmont City Tribune. Nurse exonerated. Federal investigation reveals Riverside General conspiracy. The article detailed everything. The bribes, the cover-up, the attempts on her life. It quoted Dr. Brennan's statement confirming that Evelyn's treatment had saved Cole Mercer. And at the bottom, a quote from the hospital's board of directors. We deeply regret the injustice done to Ms. Hart and are conducting a full internal review. We extend our sincere apologies and hope she will consider returning to Riverside General. Evelyn read it 3 times. Then she laughed, sharp and bitter. They want me back, she said. Dawson read over her shoulder. Are you going to go? No? Because of General Hale's offer? Because they fired me when it was convenient and only apologized when it became embarrassing. She looked up at him. I'm done working for people who only value me when the cameras are watching. Good. They walked through the base together, the morning light growing stronger. Evelyn's old life was gone. Her apartment, her job, her routine, all of it ashes. But for the first time in 17 years, she felt free. Free to choose. Free to decide. Free to build something new. Her phone buzzed one more time, a text from an unknown number. She almost deleted it, but something made her open it. The message read, You think you've won. You think you're safe, but you don't know what you've started. We're coming for you. And this time, there won't be anyone to save you. Attached was a photo of Dawson walking beside her, taken from somewhere on the base, taken 5 minutes ago. Evelyn's hand froze on the phone. The photo was clear, recent, taken from an elevated position somewhere on the base. Someone was watching them, right now. She handed the phone to Dawson without a word. His expression went from calm to lethal in half a second. He grabbed her arm, pulled her against the nearest wall, shielding her with his body. Eyes up, he barked into his radio. We have hostile surveillance on base. Active threat. Lockdown protocol now. Alarms began to wail across Ramstein. Soldiers poured out of buildings, weapons drawn, scanning rooftops and windows. "How did they get on base?" Evelyn asked, her voice tight. "They didn't have to. Long-range camera, maybe a drone. Could be a mile away." Dawson's eyes swept the horizon. "But they're making a point. They want you to know you're not safe anywhere." Then they succeeded. Colonel Voss appeared at a run, her sidearm drawn. "What happened?" Dawson showed her the message. Voss's jaw tightened. "Get her to the bunker, now, and find me whoever sent this." They moved fast, Dawson and 4 operators forming a tight box around Evelyn as they hustled her across the tarmac toward a reinforced building half buried in the earth. The bunker door was 3 feet of solid steel. Once inside, it sealed with a heavy clang that echoed like a vault closing. The interior was sparse, concrete walls, emergency lighting, communications equipment, and enough supplies to withstand a siege. Evelyn sank into a chair, her hands shaking. "They're not going to stop," she said. "Even with Martin Cross arrested, even with Vance in custody, they're not going to stop." "Martin and Vance are middle management," Dawson said grimly. "Apex Dynamics is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Someone higher up is pulling the strings." Voss was already on the phone, barking orders. When she hung up, her expression was dark. "We just intercepted communications from Apex's legal team. They're claiming the arrests are politically motivated. They've filed motions to suppress evidence, dismiss charges, discredit witnesses." She looked at Evelyn. "They're coming after your testimony. Hard. Let them." "Ms. Hart, they have unlimited resources. The best lawyers money can buy. They're going to tear apart every statement you've made, every decision you've made, every moment of your career. Then I'll answer their questions, under oath, on camera, whatever it takes." Voss studied her for a long moment. "You understand what you're signing up for. This isn't one hearing. This is months of depositions, trials, media scrutiny. They'll dig into your personal life. They'll question your competence. They'll make you relive the worst moments over and over." "I know. And you're still willing." "I'm still willing." Voss nodded slowly. "Then we give you the platform to do it right. No more closed-door hearings. No more federal protection keeping you hidden. We put you in front of the cameras. We let you tell your story to the world." Dawson stepped forward. "Colonel, with respect, that's putting a target on her back." "The target's already there, Commander. At least this way we control the narrative." "What are you suggesting?" Evelyn asked. "A press conference. Tomorrow. You, General Hale, Cole Mercer, everyone who has a stake in this case. We lay out everything Apex has done, everything they tried to cover up. We make it so public, so documented, that they can't make you disappear without the whole world watching. And if they try anyway, then we're ready." Voss's expression was steel. "I'm assigning a full security detail, 24-hour protection. You'll be the most guarded civilian in the country until every single person involved in this conspiracy is behind bars." Evelyn looked at Dawson. "What do you think?" "I think hiding makes you a victim. Speaking makes you a witness." He paused. "But it also makes you a lightning rod for every desperate person at Apex who thinks killing you will save them. So you think I shouldn't do it?" "I think you should do whatever you can live with." Dawson's voice softened. "You've already done more than anyone had the right to ask. No one would blame you for walking away now." Evelyn thought about Martin Cross's face when she'd been fired. The contempt. The certainty that she was nothing. She thought about Marcus Vance's smooth voice on the radio, offering her life in exchange for silence. She thought about her apartment building burning, 73 people fleeing into the night because someone wanted to scare her. "Set up the press conference," Evelyn said. "I'll do it." The next 18 hours were a controlled hurricane. Federal prosecutors prepped Evelyn on what she could and couldn't say. Media advisors coached her on handling hostile questions. Security teams swept the press conference location 3 times. And through it all, more arrests. Evelyn watched on the news as agents raided Apex Dynamics offices across the country. Executives were led out in handcuffs. Files were seized. Bank accounts were frozen. The charges kept mounting. Weapons trafficking, bribery, conspiracy to commit murder, domestic terrorism, obstruction of justice. 17 arrests became 34, then 51. The CEO of Apex Dynamics, a man named Richard Keller, who'd been untouchable for 20 years, was arrested at his estate in Connecticut. The footage showed him screaming at agents, threatening lawsuits, demanding his lawyer. It didn't matter. The evidence was overwhelming, and at the center of it all was Evelyn's testimony. The press conference was scheduled for 1400 hours at Ramstein's main briefing center. By noon, journalists from every major outlet in the world had descended on the base. Evelyn stood backstage, watching the crowd through a gap in the curtain. Cameras, microphones, hundreds of reporters. Her stomach churned. "You don't have to do this," a voice said behind her. She turned to see Cole Mercer, still pale, but standing on his own, his arm in a sling. "Yes, I do." "Why?" "You've already given your testimony. The case is solid. You could disappear, start over somewhere safe." "Because disappearing is what they want. They want me silent, scared, gone." She met his eyes. "I'm done being what other people want me to be." Cole smiled faintly. "Good, because I wasn't looking forward to being the only one up there." General Hale appeared next, moving slowly but steady. "Ms. Hart, ready?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." "That's the spirit." Hale gestured toward the stage. "After you." The curtain parted, and Evelyn stepped into the lights. The room erupted. Camera flashes, shouted questions, the roar of 100 voices all trying to be heard at once. Evelyn walked to the podium, her hands gripping the sides to keep them from shaking. Beside her, General Hale and Cole Mercer took their seats. Colonel Voss stood at the back, along with Dawson and his team. A moderator called for silence. It took 30 seconds for the room to settle. "Ladies and gentlemen," the moderator said, "General Marcus Hale will make a brief statement, followed by remarks from Cole Mercer and Evelyn Hart. Questions will be taken afterward." Hale stepped to the microphone. His voice was strong despite his injuries. 3 months ago, I was tasked with investigating credible allegations of weapons trafficking and corruption within Apex Dynamics, one of the largest defense contractors in the United States. What we uncovered was a criminal enterprise that spanned multiple countries, involved billions of dollars in illegal transactions, and cost 17 innocent lives. The room was dead silent. Last week, that investigation nearly died with me. I was shot by individuals connected to Apex in an attempt to silence me and destroy the evidence we had gathered. I should have died. I would have died, if not for the actions of one person. He gestured toward Evelyn. Evelyn Hart is a nurse. She has no military training, no combat experience, no reason to risk her life for a general she'd never met. But when my aircraft was 30,000 feet in the air, bleeding out with no surgeon available, she volunteered to operate on me mid-flight, in a storm. While hostile aircraft tried to force us down, she saved my life. And in doing so, she ensured this investigation could continue. The cameras swiveled toward Evelyn. She forced herself to keep her expression steady. But Nurse Hart's courage didn't begin that night, Hale continued. It began when she saved the life of an undercover operative named Cole Mercer, despite being ordered not to. It continued when she testified despite threats to her safety. And it culminated when she refused to be silenced even after her home was burned and her reputation destroyed. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. This investigation has resulted in over 70 arrests, including the CEO and senior leadership of Apex Dynamics. We have recovered evidence of weapons sales to foreign adversaries, bribery of federal officials, and conspiracy to commit murder. And none of it would have been possible without Evelyn Hart. Hale stepped back from the microphone. Cole Mercer stood next, moving carefully. "My name is Cole Mercer. I'm a federal operative. 8 months ago, I went undercover inside Apex Dynamics. What I found there was worse than we imagined. A company willing to sell classified weapons technology to anyone with enough money. When I tried to extract the evidence, they tried to kill me." He gestured to his bandaged torso. "I was shot and left for dead at Riverside General Hospital. Hospital administrators, who had been bribed by Apex, were instructed to provide minimal care and let me die quietly. But Evelyn Hart didn't let that happen. She used restricted medication to stabilize me. She violated protocol to save my life. And when she was fired for it, she didn't back down." Cole's voice hardened. Apex Dynamics tried everything to silence her. They framed her for arson. They sent mercenaries to kill her. They threatened everyone she'd ever cared about. But she's still here, still standing, still telling the truth. He looked directly at Evelyn. I owe her my life. The country owes her more than that. He sat down. The room was silent. Then the moderator gestured to Evelyn. Ms. Hart? Evelyn stood on shaking legs and approached the microphone. For a moment, she couldn't speak. She looked out at the sea of faces, the cameras, the lights. Then she thought of Mrs. Chen, safe after the fire. Of Riley, the Marine she'd saved in Kandahar, now a father. Of Cole, alive, because she'd refused to follow orders that would have killed him. She thought of every patient she'd ever fought for, every life she'd saved when someone told her it wasn't worth it. My name is Evelyn Hart, she said, her voice steady. I'm a nurse. That's all I've ever wanted to be. Someone who helps people when they're at their most vulnerable. Someone who fights for them when no one else will. She paused, gathering her thoughts. 3 days ago, I was fired from Riverside General Hospital for saving a patient's life. I was told I broke protocol, that I was a liability, that I was replaceable. Her voice strengthened. But here's what they didn't understand. Nurses aren't replaceable. We're the ones who see you at your worst and refuse to look away. We're the ones who fight for you when you can't fight for yourself. We're the ones who remember that behind every chart, every diagnosis, every protocol, there's a human being who deserves to live. But cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled notes. Apex Dynamics tried to silence me because they thought I was nobody. Just a nurse. Just a woman who could be scared into submission or erased without consequence. Evelyn's eyes were fierce now. They were wrong. She gripped the podium. I'm here to say that I will testify in every trial. I will answer every question. I will stand in front of every jury and tell them exactly what happened, how Apex bribed hospital staff, how they tried to kill a federal operative, how they burned my home and threatened my neighbors, and I won't stop until every single person responsible answers for what they've done. The room erupted in shouted questions. Miss Hart, are you afraid for your life? What do you say to people calling you a hero? Will you return to nursing? Evelyn raised a hand for silence. Surprisingly, they quieted. Am I afraid? Yes, every day, but fear doesn't get to make my decisions anymore. She paused. As for being called a hero, I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who refused to quit. And I'm not alone. There are thousands of nurses, doctors, first responders who make these choices every day, who risk everything to save strangers, who stand up when it would be easier to stay silent. Her voice softened. If I'm anything, I'm a reminder that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they refuse to accept injustice. That one person speaking the truth can bring down empires built on lies. She stepped back from the microphone. The room exploded. Applause, questions, chaos. But Evelyn was already walking off stage, her part finished. Dawson met her in the hallway. That was terrifying, Evelyn finished. I was going to say incredible. She laughed, the sound shaky with relief and exhaustion. I need to sit down. He led her to a quiet room where she could collapse into a chair away from the cameras and noise. Colonel Voss appeared minutes later. The media response is overwhelming. Every network is running your statement. Social media is exploding. You're trending worldwide. That's a lot. It's also armor. The more people who know your story, the harder it is for Apex to make you disappear. Voss sat down across from her. You did something remarkable today. You turned yourself from a victim into a symbol. I don't want to be a symbol. I want to be a nurse. Then be both. Over the next week, the trials began. Martin Cross was first. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy and bribery in exchange for a reduced sentence, 15 years in federal prison. His lawyer claimed he'd been coerced by Apex, that he was a victim himself. The judge didn't buy it. Mr. Cross, the judge said during sentencing, you were in a position of authority. You had a duty to protect patients. Instead, you sold that duty for money and attempted to cover your crimes by destroying an innocent woman's reputation. This court finds your actions reprehensible. Evelyn watched from the gallery as they led him away. He looked smaller somehow. Broken. She felt nothing. Marcus Vance went to trial 3 weeks later. His defense was aggressive, claim everything was legal, that he was following company policy, that the violence was the work of rogue contractors he hadn't authorized. Evelyn testified for 6 hours. She walked the jury through everything: the hospital, the mercenaries, the fire, the threats. She answered every question calmly, precisely, never wavering. When Vance's lawyer tried to attack her credibility, she didn't flinch. "Isn't it true, Ms. Hart, that you were fired for theft?" "I was fired for using restricted medication to save a dying patient. The hospital has since issued a formal apology and retracted all accusations." "Isn't it true you have a history of insubordination?" "I have a history of advocating for patients when administrators prioritize profit over care." "Isn't it true you've received financial compensation for your testimony?" "I've received nothing except medical bills and therapy costs from the trauma your client inflicted." The lawyer had no response to that. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Marcus Vance was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. As they led him away, he looked at Evelyn one last time. His expression was cold, empty. She met his gaze without fear. "You tried to destroy me," she thought, "and I'm still here." Richard Keller, the CEO of Apex Dynamics, fought hardest. His trial took 3 months. He had a team of 20 lawyers, expert witnesses, PR firms working around the clock to shape public opinion. It didn't matter. The evidence was overwhelming: emails, financial records, recorded conversations, proof that he'd personally authorized bribes, approved illegal weapons sales, and ordered the elimination of witnesses. Evelyn testified again. So did Cole. So did General Hale. The jury didn't even need a full day. Guilty. Keller was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Apex Dynamics was dissolved, its assets seized, its contracts terminated. 73 people were convicted in total, from executives to mercenaries to hospital administrators. The conspiracy that had seemed untouchable collapsed completely. And through it all, Evelyn rebuilt. Her apartment was gone, but the insurance payout let her find a small house on the outskirts of Crestmont City, quiet, safe, surrounded by trees. Riverside General offered her job back 3 times. She declined each time. Instead, she accepted General Hale's offer. She became Chief Medical Officer for JSOC's Special Operations Medical Support Unit, a classified program providing trauma care for military operations in hostile environments. It wasn't a traditional nursing job. There were no hospital politics, no administrators worried about liability, no protocols that put paperwork ahead of lives. Just medicine. Just saving people. She trained with combat medics, learned tactical medicine, studied trauma care in conditions that would have seemed impossible a year ago. And she was good at it. 6 months after the press conference, Evelyn stood in a military transport headed for an undisclosed location. Beside her sat a team of operators she'd been assigned to support. Dawson was among them. He'd requested the transfer personally. "Nervous?" he asked. "Always." "Good. Keeps you sharp." The plane banked, beginning its descent. "You ready for this?" Dawson asked. Evelyn checked her medical kit one more time, supplies organized, equipment tested, everything exactly where it needed to be. "I'm ready." The mission was classified. The location was hostile. The odds were uncertain. But for the first time in her life, Evelyn Hart felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Not because someone told her to be there, not because she was following orders, but because she'd chosen it. 3 months later, Evelyn received a letter. It was from Riley, the Marine she'd saved in Kandahar 7 years ago. Inside was a photograph of him with his wife and daughter. The little girl was 4 now, bright-eyed and smiling. "Dear Ms. Hart," the letter read, "you don't know me, but you saved my life in 2019. I was bleeding out in a field hospital in Afghanistan, and you refused to let me die. Because of you, I got to meet my daughter. I got to marry the woman I love. I got to have a life. I wanted you to know that every moment I have with my family is because of you. You gave me everything. Thank you isn't enough, but it's all I have. With eternal gratitude, Riley." Evelyn read it 3 times, tears streaming down her face. She pinned the photo to her wall, next to her nursing license, the one Riverside General had tried to revoke, the one that had been fully restored with a formal commendation. That evening, she received a call from Dr. Sarah Brennan. "Evelyn, I wanted you to know Riverside just announced a major policy change. All nurses now have authority to administer emergency medications in life-threatening situations without waiting for attending authorization. They're calling it the Heart Protocol. Evelyn couldn't speak for a moment. They named it after you, Sarah continued, because you were right. You were right the whole time. I didn't do it to change policy, Evelyn said quietly. I just did what needed to be done. I know. That's what makes it matter. After they hung up, Evelyn sat in her quiet house, looking at Riley's photograph, at her nursing license, at the life she'd built from the ashes of the one that had been taken from her. She thought about Martin Cross rotting in prison. She thought about Marcus Vance, stripped of his power and freedom. She thought about Apex Dynamics, dismantled completely. And she thought about herself, no longer the nurse who'd been fired and humiliated, but the woman who'd stood up and refused to be silenced, the woman who'd brought down an empire just by telling the truth. Her phone buzzed. A message from Dawson. Wheels up in 6 hours. You in? She typed back immediately. I'm in. She grabbed her medical kit, checked her supplies one more time, and headed for the door. The night was cool, stars scattered across the sky like scattered diamonds. Somewhere out there, people needed help. People who were broken, bleeding, desperate. And Evelyn Hart would be there. Not because she was a hero, but because she was a nurse. And nurses don't quit. 2 years later. The ceremony was held at the Pentagon. Evelyn stood in dress uniform, not military, but the formal attire of a federal medical officer. Around her neck hung the Secretary of Defense Medal for Valor, the highest civilian honor the Department of Defense could bestow. General Hale presented it personally. For extraordinary courage in the face of mortal danger, for unwavering commitment to saving lives, and for actions that directly led to the dismantling of a criminal enterprise threatening national security, we honor Evelyn Marie Hart. The room erupted in applause. Evelyn looked out at the crowd, military officers, federal officials, colleagues from her unit, and in the front row, Riley and his family, Cole Mercer, fully recovered, Dr. Sarah Brennan, who'd flown in from Crestmont City, and Dawson, standing at attention, pride clear in his eyes. After the ceremony, reporters swarmed. Ms. Hart, what's next for you? More of the same, saving lives. That's all I've ever wanted to do. Do you have any regrets about what happened? I regret that it took a conspiracy to show people what nurses are capable of, but I don't regret fighting back. What would you say to other people facing impossible odds? Evelyn paused, thinking. I'd say that the world wants you to be small, quiet, obedient. It wants you to accept injustice because fighting it is hard. But here's the truth. You're stronger than you know, braver than you think, and one person telling the truth can change everything. She smiled. So don't quit, ever, because you never know who's counting on you to be brave. The reporter scribbled furiously. That night, Evelyn returned to her team's base. Tomorrow they'd deploy again. Another mission, another chance to save lives in impossible conditions. But tonight, she stood in the quiet of her quarters, looking at a new photograph Riley had sent. It showed his daughter, now 6 years old, dressed as a nurse for Halloween. The caption read, "When I grow up, I want to be like the lady who saved my daddy." Evelyn pressed the photo to her chest, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. She'd been fired for breaking the rules. She'd been hunted for telling the truth. She'd lost everything she thought defined her. And in losing it, she'd found something greater, purpose, strength, the knowledge that she was exactly who she was meant to be. Not because someone gave her permission, but because she'd given it to herself. The world had tried to make her small, and she'd refused. She'd stood up, spoken out, fought back, and won. Not just for herself, but for every person who'd ever been told they didn't matter, for every nurse who'd been ignored, for every life dismissed as not worth saving. She'd won for all of them, and she would keep winning, one life at a time, one fight at a time, one moment of courage at a time, because that's what nurses do. They don't quit. They don't surrender. They save lives. And Evelyn Hart had never been better at her job.